Okay, so with us today, we have Camilla Hope, who is a graduate from Marion High School. And I just want to start out, Camilla, by thanking you for being willing to participate in this and for sharing with my students, about who you are and what you do. And first, if you wouldn't mind, just to start out and tell us a little bit about your time at MHS, when you graduated, what you were involved in, that kind of stuff.
My name is Camilla Hope, and I graduated in 2012. Whenever I went to school at Marion High School, I was involved in the French club primarily for extracurriculars. I also did some writing on the school newspaper. I was involved in the robotics club the first year that got together. So that was really exciting. We helped to do like introductory fundraising and stuff like that for it. Hopefully it's grown since then because I'm not really sure. But I had a really good time while I was at school. It's just crazy to believe that it's been so long.
Yeah, it has grown. They do competitions now and do pretty well. So they have so many people that participate. They have 2 teams now.
Oh, that's so exciting.
And
I remember.
There's a cool lab upstairs now for that. So you'll have to come see that sometime.
Yeah, I would love to. I actually haven't seen the school since it's been rebuilt, which is like how long ago it's been since I graduated.
Yeah, what are we in I don't know what year this is now, 4th or 5th year in the new building. Oh, it's probably 5th. It's been a while. I lose track of time. But the next time you happen to be in town, I would love to give you a grand tour. So just let me know. So would you mind to talk a little bit about your career path? So what happened to Camilla after she left Marion High School?
So while I was at school in Marion in high school, I knew that I wanted to do something involved in healthcare. I didn't really know what it was, but I graduated in 2012 and I started at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I started with with a chemistry major. I thought that I was going to do pre-med, and while I was there, I realized pre-med's not really for me. So I switched to community health, and that's more of like a public health kind of thing. And I graduated from there in 2016. And after that, I moved to San Francisco and I started working at a company called Triage Consulting Group. And we're a healthcare consulting company. So we work with hospitals as our clients to bring in and increase hospital revenue by working with insurance companies. And we'll look to see if there are insurance underpayments and work to resolve those. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been with them since I started in 2016, but yeah, I love it. And
So what is a day in the life like? Right now, obviously, we're all kind of working differently, but a
typical day in the life.
Right, a typical day, like in 2019.
Well, my job currently is as a recruiting coordinator. I didn't start off in this position when I started at the company. I started as an analyst, so I was really working with the insurance companies then. But now I do recruiting. I really enjoy the people aspect of getting to talk to people day in and day out. So I'm setting all of the interview days for our company and for all of our new hires who are typically entry level, just starting out after graduating from college. I set the interview days, put together all of the schedules, do reporting and things like that, and work one-on-one with my boss to increase our hiring targets and work on those things. But it's a lot of fun.
So where do you normally recruit? Do you have certain regions of the country that you primarily recruit from, or does it just depend?
Well, we'll do on-campus recruiting at colleges that are local to San Francisco and in California, but we do off-campus recruiting. So we recruit from everywhere, and people who are interested just apply on our website. I'll sometimes talk to them on the phone, sometimes interview them, but I don't know. I think that for me personally, applying from Illinois and moving out to California, it was a good experience. So if anyone's interested, then we'll be here.
So what are some tips that you would give to students who are going through that interview process? What are the things that help them stand out or set them apart?
I would recommend for people to know their experiences. I remember being in that position, being in high school and early college, and throughout that time frame, putting together a resume for the first time. I really didn't know how to do that effectively and how to communicate my experiences. But once I got pen to paper, it was just really important for me to know, what did I do in each of those jobs that I held or each of those positions that I was in, and be able to speak to that really well throughout an interview process, because we want to know as recruiters what you have done and how it makes you a good fit for that company.
So it's important for students to be able to explain how a skill they may have learned at one job can transfer somewhere else, and make it applicable to whatever the position is. I would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whenever I go into interviews, I always do the STAR method. So STAR: situation, task, action, and result. This was something that I learned in college. So I'll have an experience in mind, say, what's an experience that challenged you? So what was the situation where I was in? What was I tasked with? What action did I take to resolve that situation? And then ultimately, what was the result? And I find that it helps me cover exactly what the full situation is without kind of dancing around the topic, which is easy to do when you're nervous in an interview setting.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So, so when you went through this process yourself, you were in Champaign. Were you targeting like, oh, I want to live in California, or I'm particularly interested in this company? How did that process look for you as you applied and ended up in the job that you're in?
Well, I personally knew I wanted to go to San Francisco because I was moving with my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, and that's where he had gotten a job. I would recommend that people seek out what company they want to work for specifically, or which position they want to work for specifically, because I think that's probably a better fit. It just happened that this worked out really well, but that was the path that I took.
So, just in light of the COVID-19 crisis that's going on right now, how has that changed your work schedule? This isn't one of the questions that we talked about ahead of time. If you don't mind going over that with us a little bit, it'd be great.
Right. Well, normally on a normal day, I'm working in the office, and since most of my job is scheduling and participating in our interviews, those interviews are happening in the office. But our office is completely closed. Everyone is working from home. So I've had to create a new framework for how to do that. How are we going to have virtual interviews? What kind of information do we need to supply to our candidates who are participating in interviews so that they feel supported and they understand the process? So it has changed things, but thankfully, the feedback that we're getting from the candidates that we're working with is that they still feel like everything's going smoothly, but it ultimately has made a pretty big impact on how we operate overall.
Good. Well, yeah. So when you're talking with candidates, would you mind to walk through maybe some of the mistakes that you see as far as social skills, or how students present themselves, or candidates, maybe not students, how they present themselves? What are some of the things to not do?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. It probably depends on which part of the interview people are in, where they like have different mistakes. But what I see most regularly is whenever people attend like a lunch interview, they might get a little bit too comfortable, because it is a comfortable setting. You're sitting, you're having lunch, you're casually talking about what you like to do, and we want to see people's personality shine, but sometimes people will say things that are a little inappropriate or something that you probably shouldn't say in an interview setting. So just be mindful that from the time that you start in an interview to the time that you leave, the whole thing is an interview. Even if you're talking to someone at the front desk, even if you're just passing by someone in the hallway, don't say something that you might regret, because that, I don't know, sometimes people do that, and it does impact whether or not you might get an offer.
Sure. So as far as the employees that you hire and then retain, what are the trademarks of a quality employee? What are those things that do cause people to stay around or be promoted?
I think someone who you can rely on. If someone says, I'm going to do something and they do it, then you know I can trust this person. If I'm going to ask them to do a task, this is someone who's going to get the job done. If you're a person that says, oh, I'll do this thing, and then you don't actually end up doing it, or you think you'll do it, but it takes a really, really long time, then your employer might not trust you as much as someone who says they're going to do something and then gets the job done immediately.
I ask this question to virtually every guest speaker that I have in class, and without fail, they say like being reliable and dependable is number one. And even like, people that are like business owners will say like, we want employees that show up, like that show up for work and are there on time. And, you know, it still all falls back on being responsible, dependable, reliable. And I don't know that, I feel like that's not a hard thing to learn, but evidently not everyone does know that skill, and it does make a huge difference.
Right. And it makes a difference. You notice it in all levels of an organization. If I'm training someone or if I'm thinking about my boss, like all of these people, I want to be dependable and know that I can turn to them. And if I need something to happen, that they're going to be there. So it doesn't matter who it is. It's just a trait that everyone should have.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one final question before, then we'll just small talk if we have time. Just in general, like going back to when you graduated from high school, your senior year, your junior year even, what do you wish someone would have told you? Like, what is some advice that you would like for people, for students in particular, to take away as they watch this?
What I think is really important that I wish that I would have realized earlier is you got to learn how to study. And I know that seems obvious. If you're in school and learning, you should know how to study already. But if you're someone who picks up on things really easily, you might not have had to study a lot. And that happens sometimes. But eventually, if you do end up going off to a college or another situation where you have to study and learn and you're challenged, it's a new type of challenge to all of a sudden be thrown into this environment. So learn how to study, set guidelines for yourself of, oh, I'm going to sit down for at least 15 minutes, but maybe I'll just keep going to an hour or whatever, and follow through with it to set that and build that up. And so that way, whenever you go into college, you are prepared for it, because that's something that I wasn't prepared for. And a lot of my peers in college weren't prepared for. So I think it's very valuable to learn how to do.
And for those that don't know Camilla, she was an exceptional student, number one in her class, I do believe. And so that's important to hear. So what were some of the things that you kind of had to teach yourself? Like, was it taking notes? Was it, going to class even? I don't
know. All of the above, definitely. Taking notes. I didn't really, I guess, have to take as extensive notes in high school as I did in college, but it was important to learn what method makes sense. So for some people, that's handwriting notes. For other people, it's writing on a laptop. For other people, it's getting a tablet and writing things out or drawing things, whatever. That is something that just learn a method and stick with it and follow through with it. What else? I'm not sure what else.
How critical was like pre-reading text, assigned text before you got into class? Because, and it may not be, but I know with students, I will say like, we're going to cover this chapter next week in class, and they will literally walk in cold. And I've had some classes that I've literally I've made them outline the chapters just so that I know they're at least opening the book before we come to discuss it. So do you think that's important? I mean, did that help you at all?
Yes, I do think it's important. I have definitely been on the student side that you're talking about, where you go in cold and you sit there and you're like, wow, I really wish I knew what was going on so I could participate in this. But yes, I think doing an outline is great. I feel like whenever I outline things, it helps me go through and actually document what I'm reading and not just glaze over it and realize them at the end. I'm like, what happened? But yeah, outlines are awesome. But it is important, especially in college, whenever you're doing a discussion, because your discussions are normally just a couple of people. So if you have 4 people in a group and you haven't read something, it's going to be apparent pretty quickly that you haven't read it.
You're going to be that kid. So
right.
Yeah.
No one wants to be that kid.
Well, I just thought of one more thing I wanted to ask you, and I didn't tell you. So, but like how do students figure out their path? Kind of, like how did you decide? Well, you talked about the fact that you started with chemistry and then decided, to kind of switch over, but kind of what's it like to be in that career that you're really enjoying, and how is that affirmed, I guess? Was that a weird question?
That's a hard question, but I think it's a good question. I think I'm still figuring out my path. So, and I guess that probably is applicable to a lot of people, but for me personally, thinking about what was I good at as a kid, what came naturally to me, what did I enjoy, what types of tasks, and I've always just loved talking to people. Like with my husband, I can talk constantly, and at work, I find myself talking to people, and my job is talking to people now, and I've realized that what I enjoy about talking to people is having an empathetic kind of conversation, one-on-ones, making people comfortable. So I found a job that allowed me to do that, working with a candidate, making them feel comfortable throughout this process, showing empathy whenever they're feeling uncomfortable and unsure about the situation. So my recommendation is to think about what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, and try and find jobs that utilize those skills. Don't try and force something on you that you're not comfortable with, because then you're just not going to enjoy it.
Good advice. Very good advice. Well, I appreciate you so much sharing these gems with me, and then ultimately to my students. This is one of the blessings of technology. I can't get you here from California, but I will be able to share this with my 100+ students. So I'm really excited about that. I also want to let you know, before I stop recording, that your oligopoly video with David Roach is still legendary.
Great!
Oh man! Whenever I teach macro, I show it every year, and everyone loves it. So as we say, oligopoly. So yes.
I do remember filming it, and I remember having a great time. Your class was always so much fun.
So, well, it's still fun, chaotic maybe sometimes, but I save those little nuggets and bring them out for people, and it's infamous. Everyone knows about the oligopoly video, so you should be really, really proud of that.
I didn't realize when I filmed that 8 years ago that it would live forever.
Exactly. I'm sure there are things like that students sometimes regret, like, whoa, wait a minute, what was I doing? I should not have. All right. Well, I thank you again. I'm going to stop our recording here.